Biur haladrush anal, an explanation on the previous Maamer of Vaya midi chodesh and Machar chodesh v'nivkarata, on the concept of Rosh Chodesh. Lahavin shoresh advarim anal, to understand the root of the concepts that were mentioned previously. Hini mevor b'priyetz chaim shar yutes shu shar Rosh Chodesh perek beis. So it's brought in Priyetz Chaim on Rosh Chodesh v'zeh leshono, and this is what it says in Yan Rosh Chodesh Chulu, the concept of Rosh Chodesh. Kini emesu kivada kedushas Shabbos ein kamohu. That it is true that there's no holiness like the holiness of Shabbos. Acha hefreshu. So what's the difference between Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh? Hefreshu ki b'Shabbos hi ocheles mishulchano. That on Shabbos she eats from his table. Vihi ole al yidei ahatiferes. And she's elevated through the concept of tiferes. That is to say, Malchus goes up from the Zeranpin and goes up to through Tiferes of Zah. Even though she goes up to Ava, Musaf Rosh Chodesh as Shnehen Shavin, and Musaf of Rosh Chodesh, both of them are equal. Ke'echad as one. So she goes up to Tiferes on Shabbos, and he goes up to Avah. But on Rosh Chodesh, both of them are elevated to the same place. Shabbos nemar v'niska. Therefore, in Shabbos it says, and her nisuch, the libations for her, kihi b'sod nekeva, because she's still in the feminine concept, v'tfela el hazachar, and subservient and lower than the masculine aspect. Ach b'Rosh Chodesh ksiv nisko, but on Rosh Chodesh it says, and his nisuch, his libation, shikamo b'mayla, because she's elevated to his level, v'nikra lashon zachar, and therefore called in the same language of the masculine. Adkan lashon, that's the end of the quote from the Priyetz Chaim on the concept of Rosh Chodesh and the elevation of Malchus on Shabbos as compared to Rosh Chodesh. And to understand this, you need to understand first the concept of the 6 days of action. As it's known, that the whole day, except for the time of prayer, Malchus Malchus goes down into the lower worlds of B'Yitzir and Asiyah to make purifications, because the time of prayers is compared to Shabbos. But the rest of the day goes downwards. It's called the day of action. And then it stands in a state of back-to-back, meaning to say there's no union between Zah and Malchus. That's how I've found it written. Now this is in a Chatzi Eagle. So this is the Tzemach Tzedek explaining. This is in this beer. So he says what's needed to understand in our concept here, Levaya, or to explain who Mashiach Nizbor L'il B'Soch HaDarush is this, that it's mentioned inside the Maamer. The Kesha Hadibur Shu B'chinas Malchus, that when the concept of speech which is the concept of the sphere of Malchus, Mikabel Mashisha Midos, receives from the 6 higher attributes, Nikriyamei HaMaisa, they're called the days of the action. So Malchus is the action, and when it gives into the Midos, which are the Yamim, give into the action, they're called Yemei, the days of the action, because they're mashpia to the Malchus. Move on. Mamashkos b'Priyetz Chaim Shar Aleph Perek Zayin v'Zeh Lashonon is what can be understood what's brought in another place in Pri Etz Chaim, and this is what it says: that this is the reason that Ze and Nukfa of Atzilus go down and are enclosed below in the 6 days of the action, the days of the week, in order to elevate and purify purifications. Now, the only one that has the strength to do this is through Zer Anpin alone, because that's the masculine concept, and it has the ability to make this purification through the union. Therefore the 6 days of the weekday alone, the mundane alone, because it's only Zah. So it's explained that in order to make this purification, it's specifically through drawing down from Zer Anpin. Even though the Malchus it goes down to purify, like it says that she gives sustenance to her household. Teref is gemashir apach with the kola, that she's elevating the 288 sparks. I know that is specifically with the strength she gets from Zer Anpin, so it's still called on his name, so to speak, on the concept of the masculine. Revelation of godliness. And this can be understood. For example, when a person gives some kind of flow to another, like food or clothing, that which causes this flow and action to give one to another, it's this emotion in the heart, the attribute in the heart, that because he has a set love within the heart to them, comes out this action and flow, to give them bread to eat, food to eat, and clothing to wear. And this love is enclosed within this action to give it life, in order that the person should give with a desiring soul and the right hand that draws the person near, which is not the case if the person is giving something to the people they hate. It's like a person that throws it over their shoulder and so forth. The shadi basar kasfinchul. Hari anura, and so we see shamidos shebelev hein bechinos chayus lahamaisa, that the emotions in the heart are a life force to the action. Lechein, therefore, kashamalchus mikabelas me'ashisha midos elyonos, when malchus receives from the 6 supernal attributes, nekrayom hamaisa, it's called the day of action. That from the attributes is drawn down life force into the concept of action. The main concept of action above is to make these purifications. That's why it's called Maisa. That's when you call it Maisa, to purify and elevate. Like the translation of that Elokim created in order to do. What does it mean to do? In order to fix it. So the Mehamais is the days of fixing, the days of action, the days of purification. Now in the 6 days of action themselves, during the time of prayer, she stands with him face to face. But afterwards, they're back to back. And the concept is because in each one of the attributes You have an inner concept and an external concept. That the kindness from which comes the flow in actuality, it's external in comparison to the love that the kindness was drawn from. Like we said, that the emotions cause the action. Like the pasuk in the Navi, it says that I loved you a love that was forever. Therefore, I drew down kindness towards you. And the root and source of love is from the intellect, because in accordance with the intellect of a person, so too are their attributes. And so too you can understand above that when Malchus goes down to purify and breathe, that that's the concept of action. And this is enclosed only the external attributes of Zera Anpin, like, for example, the concept of the kindness, from which comes the actual action in comparison to the inner love that causes it. So the Malchus going down, what's enclosed in it is only the chitzonis of the midah. And this is what it says, that the kindness of Hashem is the whole day, that it's the chesed, the external, not the ahava, so to speak, not the inner. And even though the kindness is coming because of the love, nonetheless, after the destruction of the temple, nonetheless, after the destruction of the temple, the inner concept of the attributes of Zerampin are not revealed into the souls of Israel, into Malchus, the whole day, like it was before the destruction of the temple. That was in a state of constantly face to face, the whole day, even during the week. But after the destruction, they're not face to face, only through prayer, and in the time of prayer itself. It's not that you can cause through your prayer for it to be the whole day, but it's only during the time of prayer. That is because that from below there's no arousal from below, and arousal of love to Hashem, only in the time of Kriyas Shema and prayer alone. That's when you awaken the love and the fear through contemplation, to give up your life when you say Hashem is Echad, Hashem is one, and you should love. But after the prayer, the intellect, the emotions, they go away, and you have the fulfillment of the mitzvos and actualities from Rav Aseh Tov, going away from bad and doing good. It's only from the residue that's left over from when you prayed. That is, that's left the decision, the internal decision and conviction, in order to go away from bad and do good. Though it's found then that only the external concept of the emotions are enclosed within the action the whole day. Which is not the case during the time of the temple. Shine the whole day the inner concept of the emotions of love and fear. And the actual actions that a person did were only external. It wasn't that it was a rishimo of the emotions and the actions were the main thing. It was the emotions were the main thing and the actions were, so to speak, an afterthought. They were, so to speak, the rishimo. So it was only an external and in a cold way, as if someone forced them. And this, in the expression of the Gemara, is that their Torah was set and their work was secondary. And look what it says in the Maamar. If the mountains falter, therefore now the whole day Malchus receives only from the external concept of the attributes of Ziran Pin Shemizen, for that from that comes the strength of action to purify and elevate. Bakesh Shalom. So it says to search for peace. What is Shalom? That Shalom is this concept that unites two opposites. And that's to draw close the sparks that fell in the breaking of the vessels, la'alos and la'mayla, to elevate them above. I'm not sure how we got to Bakei Shalom, but anyways, this expression of the pasuk Bakei Shalom has to do with this idea to unite and elevate the sparks that fell. Al b'shas tefillah, but in the time of prayer, he mikabeles mipnimis hamidos tezah. She receives the concept of Malchus receives from the inner concept of the emotional attributes of Zeranpin and the intellect of it. The Seichel Shubichinas Ha'ava V'chabarchul, which is the concept of love, and Chochma Bina Das that goes into Za. And all of this is during the week. That's called the 6 days of action, Levar Birurim, to purify. Val b'Shabbos borer asur, but on Shabbos purification, separating out the good from the bad from the good is forbidden. Rak mashinivrar b'chol yemei ha'maaseh ola b'Shabbos, only that which was already purified during the days of action. Ola b'Shabbos goes up on Shabbos. Val yidei zehi ola mischaberes im zeranpin panim b'panim, and through this she goes up and is united with zeranpin face to face. And also they go up into the place of Abba and Ima. Each tefillah in a different way. When they receive a glimmer from Atik of Keser. And the Ha'ar of Atik, that's the concept of the not just the tefillos, but the seudos of Shabbos. Plus zimni natif taladatika, that there's 3 times when it drips, so to speak, the dew of atik shubim bechinas onega elyon, that's from the supernal pleasure. Miskale b'Shabbos, that is revealed on Shabbos. Migmar ha'maisa, from the completeness of the action sheshishimi ha'maisa that were accomplished during the 6 days of action. Like it says, V'yad is call it. V'yare Elokim is kol asher asa v'hine tov me'od. That Elokim saw that everything that was done Asa specifically, and in here it is very good. I guess Tov Me'od implies this concept of the Atik that's Miskale on Shabbos during the meals, after the Tefillos. V'zeu inyan ki bo shovas, and that's the concept of the verse, because on it he rested, in it he rested, Adam sheshovas mimalachto, just like a person that's resting from their actions, shayatarud ba, that they were concerned with. For example, if a person encloses their intellect and their emotions in some action, when they finish that work, so all the effort and the expenditure that they expressed in their emotions, their intellect, go back up into their source. And then afterwards is revealed the pleasure from having accomplished that work. And that's why it says about Shabbos that you call pleasure to Shabbos from finding your desires, and speaking your words. That the concept of speech is to go downwards, to conduct. That the concept of kingship, the Malchus, is included in the action. Malchus kol olamim. Your kingship is the kingship of all worlds, that it goes down into lower worlds. Which is not the case on Shabbos. Malchus goes back up to its root and source. And you cannot say that there's this concept of action or purifications. And that's the concept of the verse in Tehillim. The sun is charity, and healing is in its wings. So our sages said, Shemesh b'Shabbos tzedakah la'aniyim, that the sun on Shabbos is a charity to the poor. Shemesh hu yisod Abba. What's the concept of the sun? That's the concept of the yisod of parts of Abba. Again, we said that you have this concept of Zun going up to Abba and Ima. So Yisod Abba is drawn down. Shnimshach miskala b'Shabbos. That's what's revealed on Shabbos. Shazmir muchin the Abba bevav tzavos tezah. That's when it shines. The intellect of parts of Abba into the 6 sides of parts of Ziranpin. V'zeu kemoshel hashemesh. That's compared to the sun. Shemir be'olam, that shines to the world. Ki olam. Hainu vav tzavos. Because the concept of the world is the 6 sides. Mailu mata, of above and below, Mizrach u'mayrav, east and west, Tzafon v'darom, north and south. Sheshur shan mivav tzavos d'zeram, being that their root is from the 6 sides of Zerampin. And that's what it means, that it's a charity to the poor. Who are the impoverished? That is to say, Malchus v'Atzilus is called the pauper. So the Shemesh b'Shabbos, the Yisod Abba, that's Miskala into Zah, gives over to Malchus. That's called the pauper. Because of David, David HaMelech, like David said, Shaya Merkava Lemidas Malchus, that he represented, and it was a chariot to this concept of Malchus Datzilus, Ki ani ve'evyon ani, that I am a poor, I am impoverished, and a pauper. And that's the concept that the moon does not have anything on its own. It gets from the sun. And during the 6 days of the week, it only receives from the external concept of Zah. But on Shabbos it receives from the inner concept of Zah, and not only from its inner concept, but even what shines into it, the concept of Yisod, of Abba, that within Yisod Abba is enclosed the infinite light may be blessed. It's a Gehara of Ein Sof. V'gilui Oneg Ha'elyon, and the revelation of the supernal pleasure, Mochas Dima Da'atika Chulu, that's in the hidden Mochin of Atik. The Keser of Keser shines into Chochma of Keser, which is Mochas Dima, and that's Misgala through Yisod of parts of Abba. Ein Mashkos B'Siddur, Shar HaMoadim, look what it says in Siddur about the holidays. It says there are 3 times that are sanctified, that it explains there the difference between the inner concept of Zeranpin and the external concept of Zeranpin al derech ha'hefresh bein Tiferes. The concept, it says there the difference between Tiferes and so forth, and look on the bottom, there's a Kochav, it says Xavier Kodesh is a Tevos. There's missing a couple words here. Back in the Maamer by the Kochav, it says Va'ayin bi Gersa Kodesh Simen Yud Beis. And look what it says in Tanya, Dibur HaMaschil Vaya Maaseh Tzedakah, where it says, it talks about the action of charity. Vaya Maaseh Tzedakah Shalom, that the action of charity is peace. Again, he brought the pasuk before Bakesh Shalom, that this was this concept of uniting Zoh and Malchus. And now he's saying the Maaseh Tzedakah, the action of Tzedakah is also peace. And specifically Maaseh, which is the concept of Malchus. And so the Tzedakah, again, we said, was the Shemesh, the Habshpa from Zoh into Malchus. Vayin Parshas Tazdriya Bedrush Baheres Minyan Tiferes. Look what it says. Parshas Tazdriya, during the concept of Baheres, concerning Tiferes. So I guess this is the difference between Tiferes and Yisod or something. You have to look. Therefore we say on Shabbos the Mizmor Hashamayim Saprim, that the heavens tell the story. The heavens Hashamayim meaning Tiferes or Za Lefish Ne'amar Bo L'Shemesh Samchul, because it says in that capital L'Shemesh Sam'ol Bahem, that he placed a tent for the sun. U'bechinas Shemesh b'Shabbos, and that's the concept of the sun on Shabbos, that we say Mizmor Hashamayim Saprim. When it says that he is like a groom, Larutz Orach, to run the path, to run the way. What does it mean? The sun is like a groom that's running the way. That is to have uniting Zoh and Malchus like a bride and groom, to reveal into Malchus. That's the charity to the poor. That's the concept of Yisod. Because the concept of tzedakah, of giving from one to the other, is the concept of Yisod, of Zeranpin and Malchus, to receive it. Higam HaYisod Nikra Dal, because the Yisod is also called the poor person. Like it says in Zohar, Al Pasuk V'Adal Lo Yamit, that the poor person will not give less. That Tzaddik, that refers to Tzaddik, meaning Yisod. Ayin Sham, look over there. I'm not sure why he had to add the concept of Dal, because we already had the concept of Evyon and Noni. Maybe it's not just Malchus, but it's also Yisod, because Yisod in particular is called Dal, whereas Malchus in general is called Aniv Evyon. And Dal is more specific to Yisod. At any rate, V'gamzeu atzmu inyan tzedakah, and this is also the concept of charity. Shemibechinas tzedek naset tzedakah, that from the concept of tzedek, of Yisod of Zoh, becomes tzedakah with a hey, Yisod of Malchus, v'zesh because Yehuda tzedakah Yisod kami many. That's why Yehuda said that tzedakah mi many, that she became tzedakah from me. I was the Yisod and she was the Malchus. Like it says in Zohar Achrei. Vayim b'Zohar Pasha Truma Kufla Mezayin Sham Nisparin L'Shemesh Samchul. Look in Zohar Truma. There explains this concept that the sun places a tent and so forth, and it's like a groom and bride. And that's what the end of the pasuk is. And healing is in its wings. Because all the 6 days of the week, she's in a concept of lovesick, because she goes down, to be like a sheep in front of its shearers, and it's longing to be united. That's why it says by prayer, supplicate now, please, the countenance of the Creator. That says chaluna. Specifically, this kind of supplication is in a way of lovesickness. Which is the concept of you'll be satiated and have pleasure from your goodness. That's the concept of the healing. The prayer in supplication is like the love sickness, and the answer to the prayer is like the healing. Haggah, and Haggah from the Tzemach Tzedek on this, Vayim Zohar, Parsha Noach, Daf Samach Vav, Amar Bezel, Pasuk Yirpas Mizbach Vaya Heharus, Dobris Kaimachulu. That it says by Eliyahu Hanavi that he healed the altar of Hashem that was destroyed, that is the Bris Milah. So when Eliyahu he prepared that Mizbeach, it's the bris, because he says that they weren't keeping your bris. So when he healed that's like him rebuilding and healing the concept of the bris milah, as Eliyahu Hanavi is known for. That it's certainly a healing. That he establishes that place that the emunah is dependent on. That's the end of the quote from the Zohar there in Noach. Vayin Sorach El Gimel, Parshas Bahar Daf Kuf Yud Amar Beis B'Me'orei Orei Usureish Simin Lamed Gimel, Refuah B'Tiferes, that there in Orei Orei it says Refuah is in sphere of Tiferes. Refuah Merkava Lord Galashon, and Refuah the Malach is a Merkava, is the supernal chariot to that concept. After Lomar, we could say Ki Tiferes Kavayim Tzoi, because Tiferes is in the middle. Mamshich Ma Keser, and draws down from Keser. That's why the concept of refuah. Because in general, when you say Rofei Cholim, you want to pray, you want to change sickness to healing, you have to have a change of ratzon from above. That has to start from Keser. V'gam k'mosh because of Refeini Havaya ve'Rofei. And like it says, Havaya, heal me and I will be healed. V'shem Havaya hu b'Tiferes. And Shem Havaya corresponds with the sphere of Tiferes. So we see again that the concept of refuah corresponds with Tiferes, and that explains the Me'orior. Arkan Haggah, and that's the end of the Haggah, and so that explains the concept of Tefillah, which we say is hashpa from Zot to Malchus, whether it's bechitzonius during the week or bepnimius on Shabbos.